How America can sink China's aircraft carriers in a war. Beijing has made believers of important audiences, including the scribes who toil away at the Pentagon producing estimates of Chinese martial might. Indeed, the most recent annual report on Chinese military power states matter-of-factly that the PLA can now use DF-21Ds to attack ships, including aircraft carriers, more than 900 statute miles from China's shorelines. Scary. But the U.S. Navy has carrier killers of its own. Or, more accurately, it has ship killers of its own. What can disable or sink a flattop can make short work of lesser warships. And antiship weaponry is multiplying in numbers, range, and lethality as the Navy reawakens from its post-Cold War holiday from history. That carrier killer imagery resonates with Western audiences comes as little surprise. It implies that Chinese rocketeers can send the pride of the U.S. Navy to the bottom from a distance, and sink U.S. efforts to succor Asian allies in the process. Worse, it implies that PLA commanders could pull off such a world historical feat without deigning to send ships to sea or warplanes into the central blue. If the technology pans out, PLA ballistic missiles could menace U.S. and Allied warships plying the seas anywhere within Asia's second island chain. The upper figure for DF-26 range, moreover, would extend ASBM's reach substantially beyond the island chain. Still, an ASBM will be a useful piece of kit if Chinese engineers have made it work. The U.S. military boasts no counterpart to China's family of ASBMs. Nor is it likely to. The United States is bound by treaty not to develop mid-range ballistic missiles comparable to the DF-21D or DF-26. Even if Washington canceled its treaty commitments today, it would take years if not decades for weapons engineers to design, test, and field a ship-killing ballistic missile from a cold start. Still, the U.S. Navy isn't without options in naval war. Far from it. How would American mariners would dispatch an enemy flattop in combat? The answer is the default answer we give in my department in Newport. It depends. It would depend, that is, on where the encounter took place. A fleet duel involving carriers would take a far different trajectory on the open sea, remote from fire support from Fortress China, the PLA's unsinkable aircraft carrier, than if it unfolded within range of ASBMs, cruise missiles, or aircraft emplaced along seacoasts or offshore islands. The former would be a fleet-on-fleet affair. Whatever firepower each force totes to the scene of action decides the outcome, seamanship, tactical acumen, and elan being equal. The latter would let PLA commanders hurl land-based weaponry into the fray. But at the same time, the U.S. Navy would probably fight alongside Allied navies, from the likes of Japan, South Korea or Australia, in nearshore combat. And, like China, the Allies could harness Asia's congested offshore geography, using land-based armaments to augment their fleet's innate combat punch. In short, the two tactical arenas differ starkly from each other. The latter is messier and more prone to chance, uncertainty, and the fog of war, not to mention the daring do of an enterprising foe. Submarine warfare would constitute a common denominator in U.S. maritime strategy for oceanic and near-shore combat. Nuclear-powered attack submarines, SSNs, such as U.S. Virginia or Los Angeles-class boats can raid surface shipping on the high seas. American submarines, then, are carrier killers regardless of the tactical setting. Now, there's a bit of a futurist feel to talk about battling Chinese carrier groups. At present the PLA Navy has just one flattop, a refitted Soviet vessel dubbed Liaoning. That vessel is and will probably remain a training carrier, grooming aviators and ship crews for the operational carriers, most likely improved versions of Liaoning, that are reportedly undergoing construction. Let's further suppose that the PLA Navy has made great strides in learning how to operate carrier task forces at sea. If so, the Navy will integrate the new flattop seamlessly and speedily into operations, making it a battle-worthy addition to China's ocean-going fleet. Our hypothetical high seas clash thus could take place circa 2020. How the Navy deploys new weaponry as it enters service is nearly as important as fielding the weapons themselves. Under a concept dubbed distributed lethality, naval officialdom wants to disperse firepower throughout the fleet while retaining the capacity to concentrate firepower on target. What that means in practical terms is arming more ships with antiship missiles, supplemented by gee-whiz technologies like electromagnetic railguns and shipboard lasers should they fulfill their promise. The U.S. Navy, then, will deploy no single carrier killer weapon. It will deploy many. Coupled with submarine warfare and naval aviation, newfangled surface warfare implements will stand the U.S. Navy in good stead for blue water engagements by 2020. Trouble is, an open ocean engagement is the least likely scenario pitting Americas against China's Navy. What would they fight over in, say, the Central Pacific? And what would prompt the PLA Navy to venture beyond range of shore fire support, surrendering its difference-maker in sea combat? That's a rough analogy to today. Fortress China is festooned with airfields and mobile anti-ship weaponry able to strike hundreds of miles out to sea. Yes, the U.S. Navy remains stronger than the PLA Navy in open sea battle. A fleet-on-fleet engagement isolated from shore-based reinforcements would probably go America's way. But that hypothetical result may not make much difference since the two navies are more likely to join battle in confined Asian waters than on the open ocean. The U.S. Navy, it seems, is optimized for the blue water conflagration that's least likely to occur. Question marks surround who would prevail in the scenarios that are most menacing and most likely to occur. Carrier-killing munitions may make the fortress fleet a going concern at last, long after the age of man. And that suits Beijing fine.